I'm just saying that thank you. I'm just saying that the meeting is being recorded. And again, I'm Karen Steinhaus. I'm on the board of directors for the Redondo Heights condominium. And I'll begin quickly by introducing the rest of the board. David Emery is our president. If you could hold up your hand, David, thank you. Judy Corey is our treasurer. Lisa France, who just stepped away for a minute, is our secretary. And Kirk Dornan is our vice president and Zoom host extraordinaire. Kirk will be doing the Zoom technical support for the evening. I'm going to read the agenda and then review a few of the ground rules. So I sent out just a very, very simple agenda. Oops, I'm gonna need these. Okay, so we're gonna ask each candidate for 10 to 15 minutes and address the following statements on what Redondo's issues are from the candidate's point of view, plans for issue resolution, the first thing to do for Redondo after the candidate is elected with a time frame, and how the candidates plan to keep Redondo residents informed of progress. As time and interest allows, we're going to ask the floor if they have any questions, and then again, closing remarks from the candidates if they have any, and we'll sign off. Just a few ground rules. We'll keep the audience muted while the candidates talk to us about their thoughts and ideas regarding their views of the Redondo issues that we deal with on a nightly basis. I'll call on them one at a time, but let's be okay if they end up talking amongst themselves as a way of sharing perspectives and their history with the Redondo neighborhood. Although the candidates were asked to speak directly to the Redondo issues of loud and reckless driving and the illegal use of the boat launch parking lot, I don't know exactly what they plan to say or how long it will take them. I hope that their presentations will answer most of our most pressing question is, what do you plan to do about it? I don't have a clear idea of how much time this will take, but I will check the clock after 30 minutes to see where we are. Hopefully the candidate's presentation will answer our questions, but we also have the opportunity to ask questions of the candidates. Please use the chat box to post your questions. And just for those of you who may not know how to use the chat box, take your pointer down to the bottom of the Zoom screen, and then you can click on chat. The chat box usually shows up then on the right side of the screen. And please keep your questions to 1 or 2 sentences. And keep it on the topic to the issues we are addressing this evening. The candidates did not come prepared to discuss the redevelopment of the boat launch parking lot, specific police incidents, or the marina. Okay, that's enough for now. That's enough for the rules, and I'd like to go with the candidates. Yoshiko Grace Matsui is running for position 7. You can say hi. Matt Mahoney is also running for position 7, and he is the incumbent. And our other guest speaker is Harry Steinmetz, who is running unopposed for position 1. So Matt, let's start with you. Then we can go to Grace, and finally we can hear from Harry. And as time allows, we will then follow with questions from the audience. And Matt, will you go first?
Glad to. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very familiar with Redondo. I dive there frequently, so I've seen a lot of things. I'll just go down your list as far as Redondo issues from a candidate's perspective. I'm fully aware of the racing cars, the noisy mufflers, the speeding, those types of things. I also know that we've had a few crimes down here. I'm also familiar with the fact that you have the airplanes fly directly over you. As well as the late night partying and some of that just general disrespect to the community. The additional thing is the stormwater that comes down from the hillside, and that's obviously caused washouts and other problems. So those are pretty much the issues that I see from my perspective. As far as planning on issue resolution, I'll start with stormwater. We're working on things upstream to improve that. And eventually we're planning on a big project. We're going to spend $7.3 million in the Redondo area from this year to 2025. We're going to replace the fishing pier. We're going to improve the beach access between the Mass Center and the boat launch. We're going to move the bathrooms to the parking lot. And we're going to get that gated. We're going to put in lights, and we're going to put metered parking on the roads. And these are all efforts to fix a lot of the problems. Um, we also, in the short term, we've really upped our enforcement. We're doing our best. As you can see, I'm not sure if your your condo association is getting the mailer like Barry Costello and the others are. Are you getting the tickets being written? Well, we can make sure that gets happened. My apologies. I thought you guys were included on that list. But we've been writing and making warnings in somewhere about 100 a week between tickets and warnings. And I'll make sure you guys get that information. As far as, we definitely are trying to make a presence here in enforcement. It's, you know, in a city that's long and long and narrow, and we have part of Pack Highway, I can tell you it's a challenge for our 5 officers that are on duty on a daily basis to be at one end or the other. But when they can, they've made extra efforts to enforce your area. It's not a perfect world. One of the things that's happened, and you guys are well aware of it, is the new trend, especially with our youth, is these modified mufflers. You can even buy cars that have been manufactured with the muffler switches that can make them sound loud, crackle, and pop. That's a strong issue. But basically, if we can secure some of the parking on the streets and we can secure the parking lot with a gated system that matches our marina, we believe that can reduce some of the issues. We'd love to have a pass where you can buy one for $30 a year and use either the marina or Redondo. Obviously, being down here diving, I would love it. In fact, so then you've got the crime issues. One of my good friends was the one that the 12 guys jumped. I know you guys heard about it in the news and so forth, and we still never found them, and it's random. I can tell you that the tickets, and I've talked to the chief on this on a regular basis, because I actually do put pressure on them to make sure they take care of you guys down here, is that most of the tickets and most of the warnings are coming from residents outside of Des Moines. I know that's probably not a shocker for you. Obviously, you don't mind people coming down into the community that are going to be respectful, enjoy the beach, walk the boardwalk, and so forth. The truth is we just have a group that disrespects it, and it's unfortunate. We also have it in parts of town, in other places, just so you know. But in fact, I was talking with the city manager today on working and adding additional 4 officers to our staff. We're going to try to use some of the American Rescue's funds to try to get us 3 years of officers. That's one of our approaches. At least we're trying to do that. And the hope is that, you know, we can get a little more presence. We want to, of course, we're in the process of trying to get a traffic position and so forth. So that's going to help too. But also the beach, and you know, the boat launch, it's open for the folks and to get in. And I've been talking about trying to get a gated boat launch. We've had, we've had cars try to drive in and commit suicide. I know they park there, they rev their motors, they play music, and it's very difficult as well. So that's a tough challenge as well. But essentially, what I'm gonna do when I'm elected is continue to do what we're doing. Like I said, we got a comprehensive plan of 5 major projects worth $7.3 million already in play. And I was talking earlier, right now we're in the permitting process of that, which is arduous in its own right, and it's expensive. It's 900 grand just to do that portion of it, just so you guys know. And there's a process to get through. Once we can start construction, you know, the parking lot and the lights are one of my priorities. The fishing piers, the next one, and then the access to the beach and some of the other stuff we're doing with the bathrooms. And as far as the police, just, you know, as far as if I can get those officers, then that's going to give you a little bit extra performance. But one thing we can't change, unfortunately, is we can't block 2 of the access roads down. Almost if we could, I would, because I think that would solve some problems. As far as trying to keep you guys informed, so I was unaware that you weren't getting the police chief's email, and I'll make sure that the board, you know, gets that. Myself, I'm available down here all the time, and usually I love building relationships and having communication. It's tough to talk to everybody, but if there's if there was somebody that was willing to be the voice piece, particularly for your condo association, I'd be glad to do that. As far as the residents, you know, I know of several members of the community. I do my best to communicate what I can, but it's never going to get to everybody. And unfortunately, in the modern day world, we don't have a town newspaper anymore. You've got 35 channels of social media and the blog and a couple other things. And it's really hard. It's really hard because it's so much, we've got this massive avenue of information to access, but to communicate on one channel is nearly impossible these days. So it's a setup of several. One thing I'd like to do, and COVID kind of did it, is do a state of the city, like at the Mass Center. I'm good friends with Russ that runs that. And I saw that as an opportunity where a lot of the community members could come in and we could have a forum and talk about issues. And we try to do that once or twice a year. We just haven't been able to do it in some time, particularly because of COVID. So I think I answered basically your questions to the best of my ability. If there's something you think I missed, then I'd be glad to cover that.
Well, no, well, like I said, you know, it may be that we have some just, you know, general discussion amongst the candidates, but you're running up to about your time. So why don't we go ahead? I think we're going to go with Yoshiko, Grace Matsui next. So Yoshiko, thank you again. Welcome.
Sure. Do you mind if I do a quick introduction for those of you who haven't?
Please do, but I'm going to go turn on my overhead light. I see it getting dark here.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry about that. Okay.
There we go.
If that helps. Okay.
Well,
welcome, Yoshiko.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be broadcast straight into your kitchen or your living room or wherever you have to join us today. My name is Yoshiko Grace Matsui. I am a candidate for position number 7 here at the City of Des Moines. And thank you again for having me here. I really appreciate it. And thanks for Karen for setting this up, and for Lori for being here today. She and I have spoken about this issue pretty extensively, and it's nice to see the rest of you here as well. A little bit about me. I moved into Des Moines in 2007. I live in the North Hill neighborhood. Actually, Matt and I live like 1 block over from each other. So he lives on 4th Avenue and I live between 4th and 3rd on a dead end street of a dead end street. So people miss me all the time. They have issues with finding that nook where my house is. I actually moved in to be closer to my family. So my sister had moved her family here and was starting out newly married with some young kids on the way. And one day she and I were talking and she said, you know what, I think my next door neighbors are moving. And I was like, really? Well, what makes you think so? And she said, well, they pressure wash their garage doors. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's a sign of something. But the next time I drove up to her house, I walked up the street and I knocked on their door and said, hi, my name is Yoshiko and I'd like to buy your house. I heard you're moving. And they were like, well, actually, you're right. And we are moving. We're moving to Ocean Shores. And so through some bribery, I came up with their favorite brand of hot dogs a couple of times. I was able to broker a seller to buyer private sale of the house next door to my sister, and have been here watching her girls grow up and been a part of that neighborhood since 2007. And it has been a great place to live, like Jean said, even though I haven't been here 45 years. I'll say that part. I went to school at Western. I'm a double Western grad. I got my BA there and a master's of education as well. I was in California for a couple of years. I worked at the University of Southern California in student activities. And then I came back here to see this area to work at the University of Puget Sound, also in student activities. And then transitioned out of that career in student activities into human resources around 2010. And so I have been working in human resources since then, and currently work for the City of Seattle in the Workforce Equity Division, which is part of human resources. And talk about some tough customers, just so you know, I do hiring for police and fire, the police department and the fire department in the City of Seattle, and promotional examinations too. So if I look a little rummy, it's because I just finished up a week of assessment for the rank of fire lieutenant. So I had 6 assessors come in from different fire departments, different jurisdictions to evaluate the performance of potential fire lieutenant candidates. You may also have heard of me, even though you all are far outside of my district, but I'm also a commissioner for Water District number 54, which is like our downtown core area water district in the city of Des Moines. We're surrounded on 3 sides by Highline Water District and then the Puget Sound. So surrounded on all 4 sides by something else. But I've been doing that since 2015, and it's been a great way to get involved in my community. I think that, your questions that you sent in the agenda have been really fascinating because I think it gets at the core of what I believe government should be doing. And that is being responsive to community members and understanding what kind of quality services that residents need in their city. And so it really gets me sort of excited and passionate to say, oh, there's this need in this issue and government should be responding. It should be saying, hey, how can we mitigate? How can we address? How can we make your quality of life better in a city that we all enjoy living in and want to continue our peace and quiet and enjoyment of it? And so that part I think is actually it's really fun. I kind of nerd out on city things and public policy. I used to do hiring all over the city of Seattle. I've hired folks who are fish biologists who work at the dam through Seattle Public Utilities. I used to hire structural painters who have to climb a huge ladder because they'll be up on steel structures. You can't just be a house painter and get that job because you'll be 100, 200 feet in the air. And so those things are just kind of interesting to me. I think they're fun problems to solve. I had a really long conversation once with a traffic engineer about one day I was driving to work from here over First Avenue South, past the bridge into downtown, and something happened. We stopped in an intersection, Marginal and First Avenue. And if you've ever been stuck there, you know that you can be stuck there for a while, lots of traffic. And on a weekday morning, I was there for like 5 minutes and people were like getting exasperated, like steam was coming out of their ears and what the heck was going on? And I was speaking to this traffic engineer about it and he said, I know exactly what happened. The timing of your lights was off because we had something not work in the computer system and it was on the weekend timing. Something like that affects everybody who drives through there on a Monday or Tuesday morning, but it's not something that we ever think about because good government really should be sort of invisible. It should be there when you need it. The electricity and the light comes on when you hit the switch. The water turns on and is safe when you turn the faucet on, and you should kind of be able to ignore it. But when something doesn't work, it's really noticeable. It's really noticeable, and it affects our quality of life a great deal. I think that it's really exciting to see you proactively reach out to city council members and to candidates to hear about their ideas, because it's clear that you have a need that needs to be addressed and that there's some frustration about the lack of responsiveness from the current administration and city council. And so I want to say thank you for raising your voices and coming together to invite us here, because it is community members like you saying, hey, I need you to come address this. That means we could be doing a better job. The government could be serving you better. They could be addressing your issue and listening. So those are kind of my values around those kinds of things. The government should be responsive, government should solve problems, and it should be seamless. It's not something that you have to put a protest march together in order to hear your voice and to make sure your issues are being heard. When I was at USC, I took some classes, I was working full time, so I took some classes for fun because we got free tuition. Working at colleges and universities is great for that. And one of the classes I took was a sociology class on protest movements. And really what you walk away from is that protest is what people have when they feel like they have no voice. So when you see 10 people show up at a city council meeting to talk about Dead Man's Curve, that means they're not being heard. They feel like they need to march into that meeting and say, I have an issue. If they felt heard, if they felt their addresses were being considered, they wouldn't feel the need to crash a city council meeting like that. And so again, I applaud you. And I'm so glad that we're here. How can I do something about that? I spent some time looking at this, and I know that I went into problem solving mode because that's one of the things I love to do. Like, let's get on the computer, let's look at some case studies, look at what some other cities have done. But then I wanted to stop myself and say, I'm not the expert here. You all are the ones who live with this day in and day out. And sometimes government has to pause what we think is the best for everyone else and go in and ask the locals who are the true experts, who know what's going on a daily basis, who identify the repeat offenders who drive on Redondo Way or who speed through that corner, and really say, what do you think needs to be addressed? Because I can sit here on 3rd Avenue in North Hill and try and come up with a solution for you, or I can go to the experts and say, Patrick, tell me what you think needs to be done. Lisa, what would be the best thing for us to do in this situation? What makes the most sense in this regard? And so I wanted to stop there. And before I launch into all these things that I found online, I would say, you need the process. You need to make sure that people are heard. So you start with the listening session, you start with a town hall meeting, and you say, tell me what it is that you feel like should be the highest priority for you. Is it enforcement? Is it education around traffic infractions, laws, more signage? Is it alternative programs so that people who don't have anything to do on a Friday night have somewhere else to go do whatever it is that they want to do and offer some sort of alternative? Open gym night has been something that we've done in other communities and things like that. So you start with a process, time out. Before I go into problem solving mode, I want to reach out. I want to go down to the south end and say, what would work best for you? And that would be my first step. But I would be remiss to say that I did do some looking online and looking into law, not law exact enforcement, but more like ideas that police have had in other cities. And unfortunately, this is something that I do at work too, because I work in police and fire testing. And so these kinds of questions are exactly what we would ask a candidate who's going to move on into a higher level of police role. And so I think I get kind of interested about it too. But I think, beyond writing more tickets or parking an officer there 24 hours a day, which may not be feasible and it may not be the right thing to do. You might do things like, how can we have an event like an art walk that's happening in the North Penn Marina this weekend that shuts down the street for a block of time. If your cruising time is summer evenings between 7 and 10 o'clock, what alternative event can we have in that exact same spot that would prevent that happening? And it would close that street off to traffic. Or it could make that Redondo a one-way street for that period of time if summer nights are the serious issue. Let's say you want to make sure that cruising is an issue, so maybe you need an ordinance that just stops cruising, or not stops it, but makes it illegal to pass a fixed point over and over and over again, because they may not be doing the street racing side by side on such a narrow street, but they might just take up that road and drive back and forth and back and forth. You can also restrict like where people are doing the U-turn, if they're doing that in your boat launch parking lot or your parking lot, municipal parking lot right there. Don't give them a place to turn around and go back and forth. And so those are just sort of the things that I've been thinking about around that flow of traffic. But it goes back to, how can I be responsive? How can government solve some problems for you? And what can we do to proactively communicate? I want to point out that communication is hard, but it's part of the job. It's part of the job to go down and inform your constituents and your residents that you care about what their concerns are. And you can do something like this. I'm at home. I could be in my pajamas and giving you this presentation. This isn't hard for us to do on a regular basis. Those listening sessions could be on a quarterly basis. We could have rotating town halls that go through different neighborhoods in Des Moines. But really what I would like to see is something more formalized. I think Des Moines absolutely needs district councils that give input directly to the city council. And if that doesn't work, we might have to say, how can we formalize this anymore? Do we need to have 2 council seats that are in the South End, 2 council seats that are in the North End, 2 council seats that are on the east side, and 1 that's at large? Maybe then council members will feel responsive since there is a constituency that elects them directly. That was a lot of talking. I can go on and on. Being succinct is not one of my strong points. So I invite your questions and let me know how else I can talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoshika. Yeah, we are ready to, we're going to hold the questions for right now because we want to hear from all of the candidates. So at this moment, then, and thank you, by the way, if at some point after Harry is finished, it evolves into a discussion amongst yourselves, that's okay. But I think we need to go to the questions after Harry. So, okay, here.
So if I can take it away.
That was your cue.
Yeah.
Hi, Harry. Thank you. And welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for holding this. This is a great way to just sort of get in touch and meet some people in the neighborhood. Some of you may remember I ran for city council 4 years ago. I carried every precinct south of about 240th. I live in the Woodmont area. And, you know, part of what I campaigned on was that the South End needs some representation. Now, 4 years later, you're going to get one because I'm unopposed, and I think I stand a pretty good chance of winning. And you're going to get somebody from seat 3 because both Jean and Priscilla live here in the South End of town. And I think there's been a realization that perhaps we do need to have some of that representation. I don't know that it needs to be formalized in the way that Yoshiko was suggesting, because there are all other implications when you start dividing the city up into districts. But nonetheless, I think that's going to happen. Part of what I ran on 4 years ago and part of what I'm running in now is to make sure that we have the voice. Even 2 years ago, for the first time, I managed to organize a city council candidate forum at a local church here in the South End of town. Susan White helped sort of publicize that down in Redondo, and I'm pretty sure that Jean was in attendance on that. But at least we got a chance to introduce people, and now, of course, we've got a lot more people running for city council, and I think there is a lot more involvement. I do think that the South End is starting to be heard a lot more. The reason I got into Des Moines city politics initially was because there was a plan to put this huge mental health and drug rehabilitation complex about 600 feet from Des Moines Elementary School. And I didn't think that was an appropriate use of the land. I think all of those are needed services, but you cannot concentrate that much in one area and not expect it to have a negative consequence on the neighborhood. We were able to stop that, and that was entirely through community organization that we were able to do that. The city was not responsive to that. Since then, the city has changed and I think been a lot more responsive to some of the things that have come up. We have heard repeatedly, and these are the issues I think that are predominant in Redondo, is first and foremost, there's just been a constant problem of late night noise from the cars in the parking lots down there. I think, there's also constantly been an issue with the traffic running along Marine View Drive. There have been, I think, 2 very large speed bumps put in, but I think there needs to be more to slow people down. As some of you may remember, a large part of the reason why why Redondo voted to be annexed to Des Moines was because Des Moines promised it would not be a thoroughfare, which is what Federal Way was looking at that section of Marine View Drive. They wanted to expand it and make it a much busier street because they needed more egress from that north end of Federal Way. And that just didn't make any sense, because that really would have ruined what is otherwise a lovely community and generally been a quiet community. There are, as Mr. Mahoney mentioned, plans to redo a number of the facilities that are down there that are owned by the city, including moving the bathrooms across the street, taking them off the dock, reconfiguring and rebuilding some of the docks. And I think most importantly is to try to address the parking lot situation. The use of gates, I think we need more lights in there. And I think that we need to put some cameras up. There used to be a real street show, you know, almost like every weekend there was this informal car show up in the parking lot at Lowe's. And one of the things that that Lowe's did is just simply put up cameras so that now they're recording all the parking, the license plates, and they know who the offenders are. And there was some pretty dumb stuff going on around there. Apparently one of the things now is the kids are trying to run across cars that are doing donuts. And that's just not a good idea. And somebody's going to get very, very seriously hurt at some point doing that. So we need to do what we can to end and make, to clamp down on those kinds of problems. So it's not just a quality of life issue, I think, but there's some pretty dumb behavior going on that's going to get some people pretty badly hurt. The things that we can do about that are first and foremost, we can get more lighting into that parking lot. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for well over 30 years. Part of my practice when I was practicing was in criminal defense. And so I kind of know a lot more than I should about criminals and the things that they commit. They don't like lights. They don't like it when they can be seen. The darkness is their friend. And frankly, the more we can do to combat that, the better. One of the things that I had suggested when we were going through the light rail system coming down is they were putting up fences along Pack Ridge, nice big wall there. And I told them, you need to have lights at the ends of each of those cul-de-sacs so that they don't become a congregating place for bad things to happen. I think we need to do some of the same approach down there in the parking lot. And I think that's one of the most immediate things that we can do. And if with those lights, we are able to put in some cameras, even if they're just temporary cameras like they have up in the Lowe's parking lot, I think that's going to do a lot to sort of push the element that's hanging out there out of those parking lots and help quiet down that neighborhood. One of the things I want to see is they add more speed bumps along Marine View Drive. That's going to slow people down. That doesn't mean it makes it a nice place to drive in, but that's the trade-off. If you want to slow people down, you have to make it a little more difficult to drive down there. And I think that speed bumps are the way to do that. As far as the long-term plans for Redondo and sort of rebuilding that pier, I support what the city has currently got planned, and I want to make sure that sort of the voices of Redondo are heard. And one of the ways I want to do this, and that kind of gets back to, how am I going to keep you informed, is I want to see at least quarterly meetings down there, town halls, maybe in somebody's house, maybe, COVID, as the COVID emergency ends, we're going to be able to be much more social. But even if it's by Zoom, let's get together and talk on a regular basis. I think that you're going to have people that live in this area, that understand some of the problems in this area, that understand what this neighborhood, the neighborhood of Redondo is like, what the neighborhood of Upper Woodmont and Lower Woodmont are like, and can be responsive to those. And so I think that we need to have regular communication on a quarterly basis with the representatives that are there. It's great when there's a state of the city and you get kind of the big picture for that. But still, I think that it would behoove everybody if there was just a regular, steady, every quarter, what's going on in Redondo? Come talk to us. Let's have a town hall. Whether it's out there, who knows, maybe we'll end up in the parking lot down there having a town hall, and then somebody complain about us being a little too loud. But, my point is that there just needs to be that regular, steady communication. I do think that you have been heard. I do think that there are some pretty strong advocates for Redondo that are running in this election. And I think that, you've got people like Rick Johnson, who shows up who used to show up to the meetings on a regular basis and let us know what he's thinking about in terms of both Redondo and the airport. And so you've got some pretty active people, and that's a good thing. So I look forward to working with you over the next 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate that. I think that we've heard from our three guests, and they've addressed the issues or the agenda. They've attended to that. So I think we do have a couple of questions in the chat room. I'm going to go ahead and read these, and then maybe as part of the discussion, we can have a little bit of conversation back from the candidates. We've talked about keeping this to about an hour. We may go over just a little bit, but when we have these questions answered, don't be offended if we need to ask you to let another candidate speak, or if another community member wants to pose another question. So our first question is from Mary Jo, who's asking, where can we find out the full details? And you guys can see this too, for the 7.3 million five project plan, as well as a timeline for possible completion. You might want to wrap into your answer, what are the other proposals for the American Relief monies that might take away from the potential hiring of 4 additional police officers? Why don't we, you're probably waiting for me to point out someone. Why don't we, I don't know, why don't we go ahead and start with Yoshiko, and we can develop the conversation from there.
Sure. Actually, I would defer most of that back to Matt, since he had the details that he could provide for that 7.3 and the timeline for those completed projects. I am wondering how they relate back to the noise problem and the traffic problems.
Good point.
So there are 5 projects in our capital improvements plan. We have several projects all over town. It's a public document that you have access, but I'm more than happy to send it to the leadership of the homeowner or the condo association so you could share out. It's got some other things on it. This one particular document pertains particularly to transportation, but has the 5 items I spoke about tonight in detail. Each of them being their own entity and what they cost and the timeline they'd be done. As far as the American Relief monies, all it is right now is we're in speculation. There's going to be a determination, and our city manager is going to be talking to the council, from what I understand, on Thursday. But a lot of us, as your council members, we converse with each other. We have conversations. We talked about it. My thing has been, I've been approaching having more police, adding an extra officer per shift. We have four shifts, and trying to get a little bit emphasis, because as I said, we're long and narrow, and we've got part of Pack Highway, and we have a lot of police calls up there too. So how can we divide the resources and adequately cover everybody? Because we've heard you down at Redondo. We have, and we care, and we are concerned. As far as answering Yoshiko's question, so basically, let me get back to the American Relief. There's several things. There could be loan programs for businesses or grants or something like that. There could be money for health issues, could be rental assistance. There's a whole list, and I can't put concrete fingers in them on any of it. It's just been discussion. I know that the city manager has been looking at options too. So it's all speculative at this point, but it was a discussion of this is the way we could fund the additional 4 officers, and not have to use, or, obviously with tax dollars, that's always a concern, not trying to raise people's taxes, et cetera. But as far as answering what these projects do to reduce noise and stuff like that, well, first of all, if the boat launch is much more secure, you get the problem where you get the situation where they can't park there. If you've secured your parking lot with gates and so forth, you reduce the noise and activity there. What we've done in the marina reduced the police calls by 75%. So it's significant there. As far as the noise and stuff forth, you got to have, what we've been doing is trying to have enforcement down there, and we're writing tickets. And what we're trying to do is get the word out that you come down and you're disrespectful to the community, you're going to pay for it. And that's a process that takes time. So we're at it, we're on it. It's just a process. And some of the things are beyond our control about who's going to come down there, when and where. And you're trying to maintain a presence there. One of the things we did, if you didn't know, is we put that satellite police station at Redondo so we can also be a faster response there. Anyway, I hope that kind of answers what you're after. But the bottom one on the American Relief, it's still speculative. It's going to be something the council review and make determination. It was just a good idea of how we could afford them.
Thank you. Matt, I don't see any in the any more questions at this moment.
I see a lot of hands is what I see.
I have had a request from David to, oh, thank you, David, and now Lori as well, to go ahead and ask your question. Again, I'll remind you to please keep it to 1 or 2 sentences, because we want to have, we want to make sure that all the candidates have a moment to respond. David, go ahead. Oh, Kurt, can you unmute David,
okay.
Please?
I think I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hey, I want to point out something first for all the 3 candidates, and that's the police response has been impotent. If you look at the police blotter, overwhelmingly the tickets for drivers that have been written the last number of weeks have been for the morning commuters. It has nothing, that does nothing to help us with the bad drivers that are down here in the evening. The second thing I wanted to point out is most of the time when the police show up, the bad guys see them coming and stop their activities. I don't know how clear it's been, but a very large fraction of our problem can be traced to a few bad actors. And those bad actors are often in groups, and I see them set up, people lookouts. And so that they see the police coming. And so, you can spend money on sending 3 cop cars down here, and they're not going to catch the bad guys, because that's an inept police response for that sort of activity. You have to have unmarked cars or undercover police down here to catch them in the act. The third is they're not writing tickets for the biggest problems. I challenge the incumbents to go back and do a look and see how many tickets have been written under Ordinance Chapter 7.36, the Public Disturbance Noises Ordinance. I think you'll find the answer is going to be 0. And there should be 3 or 4 of those written a day down here. It's a simple standard that if you can hear a car stereo 100 feet away, then that's too loud. And even when the police do catch people with their stereos going, even when they catch people with the loud exhaust, even when they catch people when they're backfiring, even when they catch people who are driving recklessly, from what I can see, is they give them a verbal warning. And that includes the repeat offenders. So I appreciate that they're coming down here more, but you guys, you got to understand that it's impotent, that their response is ineffective. And I think it's the responsibility of the council to hold the feet of the police chief to the fire, to get him to understand that what they're doing is not working. It's a waste of time, and something's got to be done about that. Now, I'm delighted to hear, go ahead.
Hang on, I'm going to interject here for just a moment, again, in the interest of time. I haven't really had a question. I do appreciate your observations, but I want to, we can get back to that, but I'm afraid that I'll miss questions if I don't answer or have people right now. And candidates, please, think about some of your responses to the issues and observations that David is making. I think the overarching thing is we want to live in a community where we don't have to call the police. I think we're just tired of that. So again, we appreciate the David, we'll get back to you in just a bit, but I do want to make sure that Lori has an opportunity, and also Lori, if you can keep your questions to a couple of sentences, I'd appreciate that. We want to make sure that the candidates have an opportunity to reply. Thank you. If you could unmute Lori, please.
Trying to find her on this list.
I did it.
There, we can hear you. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna do a little clock here, Lori. So go
Okay.
ahead.
First of all, I have to second what David has said, that we find it very inept. But I have a question that relates to Matt's suggestions, and one is, I want to know if there has been a request from the Redondo public immediately around the parking area for metered parking, because I would hate to see low-income people who enjoy this area get blocked out at any time because of pay parking. And it can also make it worse above our building along the street. Lots of times when it's busy, they'll try and park right along Redondo Way. And I'm kind of concerned about that. And the second thing that was brought up was better lighting. And I would like to be sure that the residents who are closest to the parking lot be made a party to any decisions about the lighting, so that it doesn't create light pollution in the residential homes or condos that are beside ours that are close to the parking lot. So those are, comments and questions that I would like to see at least the metered idea answered.
So first of all, I'm going to check and see if we have any other questions that we can kind of wrap into the responses from our candidates. And hearing none, I think what I'd like to do is ask the candidates to respond to I think what I'm hearing in a second there, responding to the frustration about the response of the police, as well as, the consideration, and thank you for that, Lori. I sit right above the parking lot, and that light, I mean, it's bad. I'm saying it's bad enough now in my condo to have, spotlights out there is just, it's not my idea of an ideal thing, but that's not what we're not talking about what I want right now. So if the candidates could please address the frustration that we've had around the police response, not ticketing the offenders, and then also the paid parking meters, which may push the issue up the hill a little bit right behind us, and the lights. So Harry, why don't you go ahead? I saw you raise your hand. Why don't you go ahead and give us some perspective on that? And remember, we'd like to keep this at about an hour, so that'll give us about another 10 minutes or so. 10 minutes or so. We can go over if everybody wants to, but that's where I'm going to start asking people what they want to do. So Harry, please.
Yeah, just a couple of the responses. And Dave, I understand what you're saying about the police just don't seem to get there in time to do anything. And then when they do get there, they're not citing, at least for what you think they should be citing for. Part of the problem is that in Washington State, in order to pull somebody over, you need to be in a marked car and it's a uniformed officer in order to have any enforcement of their refusal to stop in that. And so the idea of having an unmarked car there means they're not going to be able to pull anybody over. Additionally, you have to have the infraction committed in the officer's presence in order to make their ticket a valid process in court. So you don't have the officers constantly going to court to show up and testify. And so those are the two biggest impediments to the issues that you're seeing. is that, yes, the officers are not getting there in time, and they do have, I'm sure there are spotters up there all the time. So I think that kind of leads to the second issue, which is how do we enforce some of this, or how do we discourage some of this behavior? And that's the lighting issue. And at least as far as the proposals are coming out of the council currently, is trying to get metered parking. I think the lighting issue is going to be a trade-off. If you want less people congregating down there, it needs to be better lit. And there is no way that you can contain the light or focus it sufficiently that there won't be some light pollution trade-off to that. I wish there was, but I think that that's going to be an issue. I'm certainly confident that the city will take that into consideration. But I just think that's part of the trade-offs for trying to get that. In terms of metered parking, I think the concern about having it available to the entire community is perfectly valid. That's been a complaint, and a constant complaint about the parking down at the marina, is now it costs you every time you want to go in. And so people are now parking up on 6th and 7th Avenue and walking down into the marina. Again, I think that's just part of the trade-off, where if you're going to try to limit access to a place to keep out a certain element, then other people are going to be excluded. There are no very narrowly targeted solutions to some of the problems that you have. And I'm for trying to keep a balance on that. I'm not a big fan of the metered parking. I think we should try to allow parking on the street where we can do that. Maybe a compromise solution, and I'm just kind of spitballing at this point, would be to try to shut down the parking lot at 10 o'clock at night, or have a noise ordinance that's enforced at 10 o'clock at night, and make that clear.
Harry, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because I really want the other candidates to respond to this as well. So Yoshiko, if you could please.
Sure, absolutely. Thank
Again,
you.
I'll be interjecting after a couple of moments so we can get Matt as well.
Right, absolutely. It's always a little bit rough to hear that there aren't enough resources to address the issue that you really is causing you a great deal of pain. And so, David, your comments really speak to me because I can hear the frustration in your voice. I can hear the frustration in your delivery that we call the police, we write down license plate numbers. We know the folks on site who are those bad actors, and yet there doesn't seem like there can be anything done. And I want you to know that I hear that. I hear the frustration, and I do want to do something about it. We have similar issues on 4th Avenue here in North Hill with people who hit the bottom of that hill and will throttle up and just screech up to the top. It's really can be quite loud. And so I know what it's like to have noise issues that affect me right here. My neighbors, Dan and Janelle, had somebody hit their rockery and flip their car. I mean, there was like debris from the inside of this car everywhere. And so road safety is a huge issue for many of our communities. What I would do in terms of that balance of safety and enforcement is, again, look at some of those creative solutions. What can we do to take some of those cars off of the road in the prime times that are the issues that cause the greatest amount of noise or consternation, whether it's at 10 o'clock at night, whether it's on Saturday nights or things like that? Can you put in a block off and have a promenade concert at one end that ends, at a reasonable time, 8:30, 9 o'clock, art walk, booths, food trucks, close off the ends of it so that that's only pedestrian zone. There's many streets near where I work in Pioneer Square that there are no cars allowed. And let me tell you, it's great. It's actually really, really nice. You feel safe, it's quiet, and everyone can enjoy. And it's not like you have to have a large concert or something like that that creates a lot of noise. Just closing it down, putting out cafe tables is a great way to enjoy your space and extend a lot of your outdoor space. If you can imagine a patio running along the whole part of Redondo Way and onto the beach drive, I think that would be fantastic. But it's really disheartening for me to also watch the last city council meeting when the city attorney just says, we can't do anything about it because we can't identify the person in the car, so it doesn't matter, we're not going to do anything. That's not addressing your need. That's not being an effective and responsive government. And so we need to be able to do both.
I'm sorry. I think we get
Yeah.
the,
Oh, that's fine.
okay, I apologize for that, but we do
Yeah.
want to hear from Matt as well
Sure.
regarding the lights that we were talking about, as well as the metered parking, and perhaps any of your other, if you want to wrap up some of the other comments in your response.
So David, I heard you too, man, and I'll look into what you asked me to do. I can tell you that our police recently bought a couple decimal meters, and I know Harry can attest to the fact that that it's very difficult to, even though there's noise ordinance, there's some difficulties in proving it and getting, we'll say, for lack of a better word, a conviction. But we're entering into that world, and I'm hoping to see better results. Also in the noise ordinance, just so you know, I was speaking to Tina Orwell the last couple of days, because the truth is we need the sales of these types of devices that cause the noise, both from the manufacturers and to the state. We need them banned. And we're looking at the solutions, and we're looking at maybe talking at the federal level too. So there's things like that where we can help, but part of the problem is when they can get these so readily available, it's a problem that we're going to be fighting constantly. But those are some of my ideas there. As far as the lighting and the development, when the design work's done, there will be public input, just so you know, and you guys will have an opportunity to talk about that as well. We don't want to make it too bright where you can't see, but as Harry said it eloquently, there is a trade-off to some of the things we need to put under the light. As far as the parking, maybe it doesn't on the meters, it doesn't end up that way, because we do realize that and we close it off. But what we're trying to do is trying to help you secure this area so we can eliminate this late night activity. And always, just so you know, the parking lot would close at 10 no matter what. That's a definite. As far as some of the things Yoshiko suggested, well, a street fair is okay once or twice in the summer, but not every night like you guys are facing now, right? That's unrealistic, and that turns it into kind of a zoo. So that's difficulty. And then on a clarification about what the city attorney was saying, as far as you got to, when we were talking about if residents could take video and it would be permissible to get a conviction in court. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the videos from the back and other positions, and if you can't see the face and positively identify them, that was what was referenced there. Anyway, we care about Redondo. This current administration staff does. I know you don't feel like it sometimes, but we're really throwing a lot of effort your way. And we're the city, what it is and what we have, we spend 54% of our general fund on public safety. That's a lot, and it's a tough job. Remember, packed highway is one of the most challenging policing nightmares, and I don't mean to make that an excuse. It's just a challenge that we're facing where we're trying to have presence there. So thank you.
I'm going to just take just a moment to interject and make sure that I heard you correctly, Matt. Did you just say when the design is done, we'll have input?
Well, so we do the preliminary design work, and it's put into drawings and schematics and stuff of kind of like, this is the way it's visioned, to kind of throw it out for you guys to see. And then we solicit public feedback and we change accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
It's a process, right? But we got to get a starting point, and that's what we do in the design work.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that.
Yes.
You can understand my concern about showing us the finished design.
No, we try to have community involvement. You know, it's never a perfect process. It's never going to be, and nobody's going to get all they want. There's compromises. It really is, because we're trying to serve not only you, but the public space there that has access for everybody. It's, you know, if you get 70% of you win. Yeah. Right.
Thanks. Okay, I see another hand up, and we are right at time, so I'm going to do this one last question, and then ask everyone to just be patient while our candidates give just their final closing comment or two. Lori, if you can unmute Lori.
I got it.
Thanks.
This is just a closing comment, and that is that one of our officers, according to your candidates, one of our officers has the arrest record of the person who ran into our fence and our gate in our HOA. And it feels like there's more to these drivers than just being crazy out there. This young man had a California license plate, not a Washington plate, even though his family seems to be here. His dad showed up and he had no insurance whatsoever. Now, if there's 5 or 6 or 7 of those guys out there, that knowing that much increases the kind of danger that they are providing, that they are creating in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks. So again, if the candidates could just give a 1 or 2 sentence synopsis and let me know why I should vote for you, I'd appreciate that. Oh, Yoshiko, I always like to start with you. Go ahead.
Okay, that's a great question. So I would again say thank you to everyone. It was a pleasure to meet you and to get to know some of the issues that you're facing down in Redondo Heights. Like I said, I'm not an expert in the south end of Des Moines, and so I learn a tremendous amount every time I get to knock on doors, either virtually or in person, and talk to folks about what is going on. I would just go back to what those values are, that I believe that government should be responsive, the government should solve problems for people, and that it shouldn't take coordinated voices coming together in protest in order to feel like government is responsive. It should be something that we're doing proactively, that folks feel like they're being heard and that their issues can be addressed adequately, not just because we decided to throw a forum and invite all of our council members to attend. Why you should vote for me. Those are the things that I hold true and I live to every day. I already am a city employee, and so I think about being a public servant on a regular basis. I've worked for the city of Seattle for 9 years. I have to think about the city and the taxpayers when I turn in a reimbursement form for a remote control that I bought this week to make sure that we could watch tapes on a VCR that we didn't exist because someone lost the remote. But that $30 doesn't come from just my pocket. It comes from everybody's pockets. And so am I using it wisely? Am I addressing a need? Am I making sure that everyone has access? Those are the kind of values that I stand for. And like I said, I think that these are things that excite me, the challenges that I want to face. And so I hope that you can send me through to the general election. Vote now, August 3rd, for Yoshiko Grace Matsui. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yoshiko. And Matt, can you take a couple of moments too and wrap up why we should vote for you?
Sure. First of all, I also thank you for your time. I don't know if you know much about me, but I'm a dedicated city council member to you. The South didn't have representation. South End didn't have representation, and I think I've been one of the biggest champions. I think Harry would attest to that. He's seen how I've been involved in the community. I'm very familiar with Redondo because I'm down there a couple times a week, usually diving. I got a whole community, and I know several people there that I talk to on a regular basis. I work a full-time job of 50 hours, and I probably put another 30 to 40 in the city every single week. I'm insanely committed to this community, as some people might say, and I put in the time. I build relationships. I want to work through issues, and I do want you guys to know that we are listening to Redondo. I understand that it's tough, and you do have to be voices to us. And sometimes when you get together and make voices, it's louder. But one of the challenges is we're trying to help everybody everywhere in this city, and it's not a simple task of isolating one area and making them happy and then nobody else. It's a task that you have. It's arduous to do it all. And I can say, and I can attest that this current city council, along with the staff, really does care, and we are doing the best we can. Now, we're looking at new ways and changing, like the decimal meters, et cetera. I just want you to know that probably why the biggest reason you vote for me is because I have demonstrated over the last several years my commitment to your portion of your neighborhood, but the whole city of Des Moines. And I am there and everywhere always because I care that much. There's a window of time you do something to help your community. And I just want another term to be able to do that and complete what I set out to do. And that's move the city forward and make it a great place to live, not only from the north to the south. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And Harry, can you tell us why we should vote for you and not write in somebody else?
Yeah, I think that, it all began 4 years ago when I ran for city council and I swore to start representing the South End here because we didn't have any representation. I think since then, there have been a number of events that I've been involved in to try to bring the South End into town and to get the attention of some of the current council members who've been receptive to that and to listen to the needs of the people down here. Particularly as far as Redondo is concerned, I think you're finally going to get that kind of representation because you're going to have at least 2 people from the South End of town. I think that communication on a regular basis is necessary in order to provide that kind of representation. It doesn't take a huge community response if there's already a way for the community to give you that feedback. And that's one of the things that I want to do that we're simply not doing enough of in this city. So if you vote for me, you're going to get an opportunity to bend my ear just about any time you want, but we'll try to formalize it into quarterly meetings so that you can actually bring the concerns to me and I will take them back to the council. So I hope I can get your vote.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. We're running just a little bit over. I didn't put an absolute time on it, but I think we've been heard by the candidates, and I'm going to go ahead and conclude the meeting then, unless I hear some objections. Okay, well then, adios, and thank you, guests, for showing interest. I appreciate it. William Schott, J.C. Harris, Anthony Martinelli, and Gene. Gene, help me out with. Can you unmute Gene so I can hear his name?
It's Achziger.
Achziger. Okay.
I tell people to, they look at it and it's hard. Pretend you're sneezing.
I will never forget you, Gene.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Thank you, guys.